The January blizzard had already stolen 2 days when Thomas Reed noticed movement near the frozen fence line, something that did not belong in the white wasteland, and something fighting with every ounce of life left to survive impossible conditions. What he found would upend assumptions about survival, motherhood, and the fierce will to protect family. The storm began modestly on a Tuesday evening, light flakes flickering in the headlights as a ranch truck made its way home, but by Wednesday morning the ranch lay under 3 feet of snow, and the wind screamed across the plains like an angry beast. By Thursday the power went out, the roads vanished into drifts, and Thomas, a farmer of 43 years, found himself alone on the place with his cattle, his old border collies Max and Belle, and a growing sense that this storm was different, meaner, than anything familiar. He had seen winters that buried tractors, storms that ended entire herds, cold that turned diesel to gel in tanks, but nothing prepared him for what the wind had brought. By the time Friday came, Thomas was breaking trail through waist-deep snow in snowshoes to check fence lines, every gust cutting through him like a knife. Movement near the northern fence stopped him cold at first because it seemed impossible. A pale shape against the white, almost invisible in the glare. Approaching carefully, boots crunching on crusted snow, Thomas realized the shape was a horse, a gray mare so light that her coat nearly disappeared in the drift. She stood motionless, head lowered, body angled to block the wind as if acting purposefully to shelter something behind her. It did not look like a wild herd animal. Her mane had clearly been trimmed, and despite a coating of ice and snow, her body showed signs of a life that once included regular feed and human care. She had belonged to someone, and someone had left her to face the blizzard alone. As Thomas drew closer, calling softly, the mare did not turn toward him. Up close the truth became visible. The mare's eyes were clouded, milky with cataracts, and she was completely blind. Yet where sight failed, instinct and something deeper had taken over. Curled tight against the mare's side were 2 tiny bodies, newborn foals still damp with birth fluids, pressed so close they looked like a single animal. Twins. Years of ranch work had taught Thomas the risks twin foals face. Most mares cannot nurse 2 babies effectively, and twins born in harsh weather are often lost within hours. These two should not have been alive in the middle of Wyoming's fiercest storm in a decade, born to a blind mother without shelter, food, or help. But they breathed, their chests rising and falling in perfect, fragile rhythm, and the mare had positioned her body in a shield against the gale, holding them beneath her as if she could feel the wind and knew precisely how to protect them. The scene tore at Thomas. Tears froze on his cheeks as the impossible reality sank in. A blind, abandoned mare had kept newborn twins alive through pure will, through a type of love that did not need sight to act. Without hesitation born of a lifetime on the range, Thomas moved into action. The nearest barn was roughly 300 yards away across drifts that no foal could walk through. The mare was shaking from cold and exhaustion, her legs thin and trembling from hours on her feet guarding her babies. Moving her risked panic. A frightened mare could injure her foals. Leaving them in the drift meant certain death. The choice was clear even if it felt impossible. Thomas approached with steady, slow steps, speaking in low tones so the mare could locate him by sound. He put a hand on her shoulder and let her feel the steady presence, keeping movement calm to avoid triggering a bolt. The mare flinched but did not run. Her breathing was shallow, her ribs visible beneath the frozen coat. Thomas wrapped his heavy winter coat around both foals, bundling the tiny creatures close to preserve heat and shield them from the wind. The mare shifted noticeably toward the bundle, making soft sounds of distress as if to check where her babies had gone, and then, incredibly, she chose to follow. Blind, exhausted, and battered by the storm, the mare trusted the human voice guiding her because it carried the safety her babies needed. The trek to the barn took nearly an hour. Thomas broke trail with snowshoes, stopping frequently to let the mare catch up, letting her lower her nose to the bundle to confirm with scent that her foals were still present. His arms burned from the strain of carrying the foals, his legs protested with each step through the deep fall, and the wind tried to knock him off balance, yet the mare never wavered. Each slow step was a quiet testament to the bond between mother and young, a line of faith stitched across a frozen plain. When the three finally reached the barn, the dogs began barking inside, but a stall had fortunately already been cleared earlier in the week. Thomas eased the mare onto deep straw, careful as she slipped on the concrete before finding footing. He laid the bundled foals down and unwrapped them. The mare's nose moved rapidly, seeking each baby, inhaling to be sure they were there. She uttered soft nickers, the universal sounds of reassurance between horses, and both foals responded with tiny, kitten-like noises. Immediate care was urgent. The mare was severely dehydrated and thin. The foals were weak and needed to nurse before nightfall or risk succumbing. With no phone signal and roads impassable, the vet could not arrive until conditions improved. Thomas improvised. Warm water was coaxed into the mare slowly to avoid colic, towels wiped away the worst of the moisture from coats, and extra heat lamps and sealed barn measures were set up to make the stall as comfortable and draft-free as possible. The crucial moment came near midnight when both foals needed to nurse but were too feeble to stand on their own. Helping each foal to its feet, supporting legs that bowed and stumbled, guiding tiny mouths to a mother who could not see required patient, steady hands and a calm animal who somehow understood what was being asked. On the first successful latch, the mare let out a long, trembling sigh that carried relief, exhaustion, and something like gratitude. The second foal took longer, needing multiple guided attempts before finding the proper position and beginning to feed. As the sound of suckling filled the barn, hope arrived with it. Max and Belle settled nearby, their presence a quiet comfort against the roaring storm outside, and a sense of exhausted peace finally allowed the helper a single long breath. That night did not end the crisis. The mare needed steady fluids and nutrition. The foals required monitoring, and questions about where this mare had come from and who had abandoned her demanded answers. As the weather began to shift, Thomas dug out his truck and called around. The local veterinarian could not make it immediately, but talked him through a careful inspection and treatment plan. The implication was chilling. It appeared the mare had been dragged out and left to die rather than given a humane end or proper care. A halter scar and trimmed mane showed she had belonged to people who once cared for her. She had not wandered into the county on her own. The sheriff's deputy promised to check, but the answer carried little conviction. Legally, abandonment opened a path for a new owner, and with swift paperwork Thomas was able to claim the mare and her foals, rescuing them from a fate of neglect. When the veterinarian finally arrived, hours later than anyone hoped, the assessment was remarkable. The trio were in far better shape than expected given the circumstances, a fact all agreed was owed to the mare's determination. Naming the animals felt important. The mare's steady courage suggested the name Grace, a word that seemed to fit how she had protected her young under impossible conditions. The larger foal, already bold and curious, became Hope, and the smaller, quieter twin, with an attentive, thoughtful gaze, became Faith. Grace, Hope, and Faith, simple names that carried the story they embodied. Word of the rescue spread through town. Neighbors came by with carrots or blankets, strangers stopped to leave small kindnesses, and a local news outlet eventually shared the image of the blind mare with her twins safe in a warm stall. The story struck a chord. Donations arrived to cover vet bills and feed, and the community took a wider interest in how blind or disabled horses might be aided. When the donation fund exceeded immediate needs, extra money was given to a rescue group specializing in animals with disabilities, spreading help further than one ranch could alone. Spring came slowly, but when the snow finally melted enough for a first outing, the moment was electric. Grace led her twins into a pasture for the first time, their reactions to open space bursting into joyous runs and playful kicks. Grace stood with her nose lifted, the spring breeze slipping past a face that could no longer see but could very clearly feel the turn of the seasons. Watching them move across the plains, the scene felt like a photograph that would hang in someone's memory forever. A blind mother and two foals who had been given life again. The Carson heirs never claimed Grace, and none came forward to dispute the decision to keep her on the ranch. For the people who had watched the mare stand through the storm and then lead her foals out into the sun, the matter was settled. Grace and her foals became full-time fixtures on the ranch, and over time hope and faith grew into magnificent animals, each bearing a bit of her resilience. Hope's coat darkened to a strong gray while Faith stayed paler, almost white, yet both carried the calm intelligence and steadiness that had kept them alive. Training them gently without pressure forged a trust that only deepened as the seasons passed. Grace, relieved of the stress that had threatened her life, showed a playful and affectionate side and learned the layout of the property in the ways that blind animals adapt, by routine, by the memory of scent and touch, by the turn of fence posts and the sound of water. Visitors were often surprised when told Grace could not see, and more surprised still when they watched her move through fields with quiet surety. The miracle that started on that winter day became a quiet lesson that rippled outwards. The story was told and retold. The contrast between the cruelty that left her in the storm and the collective compassion that saved her was stark, but the larger lesson lay in the mare's refusal to surrender. Time deepened the bond between animal and human. Years later, on a cold January morning with fresh light snow beginning to fall, Grace's muzzle had gone white with age and steps were slower, but the spirit remained unbowed. The twins had matured into horses who bore the memory of their first hours like a badge of resilience. The sight of the three, mother and twins, standing together in a barn stall was a small ritual of daily gratitude. The rancher who had found them would still walk to their enclosure, speaking gently as if in thanks, slipping a hand against Grace's neck where she leaned in to be petted, the exchange unspoken but deep. The flash of fear that had once come with every storm subsided with every year they endured together. For those who saw them, the animals became more than survivors, they were teachers. The mare's actions in the storm demonstrated that sight is not the only way to know what matters. A mother's instinct, the steady warmth of a body used as shelter, the willingness to stand in harm's way for the sake of others, those are forms of sight as clear and true as any pair of eyes. The ranch continued as it always had, but the tale of grace, hope, and faith became woven into its fabric. Photographs of Grace silhouetted against a wide Wyoming sky went up on a wall where visitors could see them, a reminder of the day when impossible odds were set aside by determination and care. The names stayed, Grace for the mare who protected, hope for the foal who reached outward into the world, and faith for the foal who trusted without seeing. Together they formed a small family that had outlived the cruelty that tried to end them. This is not a story of simple rescue alone. It is a story of choices, the choice to leave, the choice to return, the decision by one person to risk cold and fatigue to save a fragile family, and the mare's decision to trust a stranger's voice when sight had failed her. The combination of those choices turned a bitter winter into a life-saving crossing from death to survival. The community that rallied around them turned curiosity into action, and a tragedy turned into a lesson about the power of compassion. Years on, the memory of that storm stayed vivid for those who had been there. On quiet mornings when snow whispered to the ground, the sight of Grace standing serenely in a stall with hope and faith grazing near the fence served as proof that miracles are possible, not as some magical cosmic event, but as the result of stubborn love and steady choice. The mare never needed to see to know who her children were or to feel when they were in danger. She taught everyone who watched that love has its own language and its own compass, and that a mother's determination can achieve what pure logic finds impossible. The rescue also left a mark on the broader community, inspiring conversations about responsibility and humane care for animals. It raised questions about what neighbors owe each other and what accountability should look like when life is treated as disposable. Donations that arrived after the story went public were used to help other animals in need, creating a small cycle of rescue. Grace, hope, and faith became living proof that kindness multiplies when shared. For anyone who witnessed the transformation, the picture was simple. A blind mare stood through a storm and kept her young alive by instinct and heart. A human arrived and honored that instinct with aid. A community carried the aftershock of that encounter into future acts of care. In the end, the storm did not win. Life did. The lesson did not vanish with the thaw. It settled into routines and memories and the soft touch of hands that fed and brushed and repaired what cruelty had almost destroyed. The mare's quiet heroism served as a daily reminder that strength can be found in the places least expected, that protection does not always need sight, and that choosing to act is itself a kind of grace. For anyone moved by this account, sharing it can be a way to carry forward hope. Pass the story to someone who needs to be reminded that courage and compassion still exist in the world, that life can be reclaimed from the harshest odds, and that miracles sometimes come on the back of simple, steady acts of care. If this story touched the heart, please show support by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more stories of animal courage and quiet human kindness can find new audiences and keep reminding everyone that, even in the coldest moments, love finds a way.